This season is all about the emotional engagement series, where I'm going to focus a lot more on that inward journey of awareness and understanding so that we can better engage our children emotionally and walk with them through the highs and lows of their growth and development in a much more effective, positive, and calm manner. Hi everyone, and welcome to the brand new season of the Experimental Parent with me, Jasmine. So on the very first episode of this season, I wanted to talk about patterns and seasons. I find that this is really important in that first step of understanding why our children tend to react or behave the way they do. So many a times, our children at different phases in their lives just seem to play out in a very strange manner, or they may be behaving in a way that is very unlike them. They could be melting down a lot more frequently than usual, and you just wonder, why is my child like that? Why are they going through that? And I can't handle that right now. I can't deal with this right now. And this has a lot to do actually with patterns and seasons that our children go through, very much the same way that we adults go through various patterns and seasons. And therefore, I think in understanding our own patterns and in understanding our children's patterns, we can approach more mindfully and tackle the issues at its root cause. So this pattern that I'm talking about relates to how we tend to react in a certain manner when we are faced with a particular trigger or stimulus. So if you think back on your own patterns, what can help would be to think back on the various times, various incidents or episodes where you seem to have lost control of your emotions, where you reacted in a way less desired. And it really would help if you really pen this down. So if you have a piece of big paper or a chart, that would really help, where you just take pen and paper and start documenting, thinking back and documenting on the times that you reacted in a way less desired. Okay, so the various incidents, the various episodes, recall them as vividly as you can and ask yourself these questions. What kind of feelings was I feeling at the time, right? So what emotions came up and what were the corresponding feelings I felt at the time that this trigger happened, at the time that this incident happened. And it's best to be as detailed as possible to really kind of immerse yourself back in that situation so that you can come up with as many of those deeper emotions, the ones that are underlying, that are the undercurrents, the ones that you probably don't want to say out, you probably don't want to admit, you may not even be aware of at that point in time. But now as you're reflecting on it retrospectively, you're letting them come up to the surface. And it's important to do that because a lot of times when we are in that moment and we are facing somebody, we go into a very self-righteous and self-justification mode. We probably don't say how we really feel because sometimes those feelings feel very ugly. They sound very ugly, right? It's that part of us that we don't want to allow somebody else to see because it can be really dark, it could be really ugly, it could be against the image that you are trying to project out to the world. Hence, we try to use certain justifications to say why that reaction was totally warranted. But in this reflection activity, you really want to let all those emotions come up because that is critical for you to understand fundamentally what is the pattern that you tend to fall into or fall towards when those triggers happen. So those incidents, that as you list them down, you will find that you tend to react to those same stimulus or those same triggers in the same way. So as you start documenting them, you're going to realize that, every time this happens, but it's the same stimulus or the same trigger, I tend to always react that way. Okay, so after letting those emotions come up, right, first question to ask yourself is, what are those emotions and those corresponding feelings I feel when that trigger happens? And the second question to ask yourself is, what could these emotions and feelings be telling me? what is that deeper message that my body is trying to tell me about these feelings? So for example, an emotion of anger can actually open up a whole lot of other messages beneath, right? It could point to fatigue, it could point to feeling helpless, it could point to feeling lonely, needing companionship, feeling disappointed by something, or an underlying insecurity that you're experiencing, and it manifests in the form of anger, right? So just ask yourself these two questions and list down those incidents. You might want to recall about between 3 to 5 incidents where the triggers are similar and you tend to react to them in the same way. So I'll give you an example. My own pattern I discovered was from the various times that I probably withdrew, that I crumbled, that I melted down, or that I was angry at something. I find my pattern is when I feel stressed and overwhelmed, I start blaming something else other than myself, right? So for me, that is the pattern that I have identified for myself. So it's the same with our children. So after you do this reflection on your own, you can really understand the depth of understanding your pattern, and you can go about to begin understanding your children's patterns. So for them, of course, they probably won't be at the stage where they are able to map out all those various incidents. But you, as their parents, you're the closest person to them and you've spent the most time with them. Your observations of the times they melted down, the way they tend to act when somebody says something to them, helps you to identify their patterns. So it goes like this: when stimulus, my child or I responds, right? So when that trigger or that stimulus, my child tends to react that manner. Okay, so think back, same exercise, think back on the various moments when you saw your child act a certain way, less desired, and you think back on those various incidents where it happened. Start picking out the common words or the common reactions you tend to see from all these incidents, right? So you have mapped out the various incidents that they lost control or they tend to react a certain way, and from your observations, what is that common reaction that you observe, the common words that keep appearing in the times that you penned it out, the common reaction, and that will help you formulate this pattern statement. And here's the important thing: you don't want to force them out of a negative pattern. A lot of times, especially as Asian parents, we are very conscious of what society thinks of our children, right? We're always making sure that our children act in a way that is socially acceptable. So we tend to jump into helping them remove that pattern, right? Something that is not acceptable, we want to remove it. For example, boys cannot cry, cannot get angry, right? Don't show your anger, or cannot get jealous, must share. Yeah, so these kind of thoughts, they are actually the assumptions and the beliefs that we're already imposing. And when we see a pattern in our children that seems to be going down this track, we want to quickly remove them. We feel, okay, that's not acceptable, I'm going to forcefully remove it. But here's the thing: when you just try to force them out of a pattern, or you shame them and you tell them that this is not acceptable, don't do that, you're not treating that root issue that this pattern exists. You may temporarily kind of remove it, but it is ingrained in them, and it's a pattern in our brains. And I mentioned this in my earlier episodes. Our brains follow patterns. So if they don't know and they're not guided on how to create more positive, better patterns when dealt with that same trigger, that same stressor or that same stimulus, eventually as they grow up, they will still fall back on those same patterns, those same negative patterns that we've been trying so hard to change. So the thing is, don't force them out of a negative pattern. We can coach them to help them formulate and practice a new positive pattern. So for example, if you notice for your child, it could be that pattern statement could play out as, when he feels attacked, my son gets defensive. Okay, so this could be from various examples when you saw that somebody scolded your child, scolded your son, and his defense was to get angry back, or to retaliate, or to retort back. That's him getting defensive, right? So that is the pattern that you've identified. When he feels attacked, and it plays out in the form of being scolded, being told that he's not good, being challenged, he gets defensive. So he will either say, no, I don't want that, or stop it, or that's not true, and he'll say something back. That is the pattern for him, okay? Or it could be, when she feels ashamed or embarrassed, my daughter blames someone else. So this could also be in the form of moments where your child is being corrected, when she was being told that, oh, something that you said was not correct, it's supposed to be this way. And you notice that makes her feel ashamed, or it makes her feel embarrassed. And because of that, she tends to blame somebody else for it, right? Or it could be if she fell down, and she accidentally tripped on something, or she ran too fast, or she wasn't paying attention, she fell down. And she feels embarrassed, she feels embarrassed that she made a big boo-boo there. She would immediately look to somebody else and say, Mommy, why did you put the toy here, right? So that's manifesting in this statement. When she feels ashamed or embarrassed, she blames somebody else. So that is the pattern that you identify. And you notice when you have identified this pattern that it is not something that is always visible in plain sight. Because what you see, that action there is, she fell down, she got upset, right? She fell down, she got angry with her mom. But this pattern statement here is not, she fell down, when she falls down, she gets angry with her mom. It isn't, right? Because it's going even deeper to why she may be acting that way. So back to those two questions, remember? What were those feelings that came up when that trigger happened? What were the emotions that came up when that trigger happened? And what could those emotions be telling her, or could be telling you about what she's going through? Okay, so back to that same example, she fell down, that was the action, that was the stimulus, right? But those underlying feelings and emotions was that she was embarrassed from falling down. Okay, so that was the stimulus, that was the trigger, because she felt embarrassed. And therefore, when she got upset with her mom, it's her blaming somebody so that it doesn't appear like this was all me. Okay, so it's really a deep process, and it's not something that you can just come up with immediately, especially if this is the first time you're doing it. But keep going deeper, keep asking yourself those questions. And what can help you would be questions like these. What might be going through their minds? Okay, so when somebody tells them, maybe not necessarily in a scolding manner, when an adult just tells your child that, hey, you're not doing this the right way, what might be going through their minds? It could be, I'm told that I'm not doing something as well as I want to be. It could be that I want to show that I know my stuff, right? I want to show that I have learned a lot of the things that teacher taught me in school, but now somebody is telling me that what I'm learning and what I'm trying to show is wrong. So there could be those feelings of shame, feelings of inadequacy, right? Okay, those are the deeper things under the iceberg. Those are the things that really need to come up to the surface first. You can ask yourself, you can ask them, how might they feel as a result of this trigger, right? Like falling down, something as simple as falling down. For adults, you probably don't think twice. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, you're hurt, just get up. But how might they be feeling in their world? Falling down could be signs of losing that psychological safety, right? Of needing somebody, right? That need to be comforted. All of these feelings, how might they be feeling? And thirdly, you want to ask, how might we help to reframe those thoughts? So that's where we come in. That's where we as parents, as co-regulators of our children's emotions, come in to help them into a more positive pattern, as opposed to forcing them out of that negative one. So back to those examples that I stated here on the screen. When he feels attacked, he gets defensive. So maybe when somebody tells him off, or somebody says, Tobias, this is not right, okay? You shouldn't be doing that. That is against the rules. He gets defensive. So what might be going through his mind? He might feel that, oh, this is somebody telling me challenging my autonomy, right? This is somebody telling me that I cannot do something that I want to do, that my body, that my brain, which is now very emotionally charged, is, well, pulling me to do. Yeah? So he could be thinking that. He could be thinking that I am losing my independence. He could be thinking that this person makes me feel uncomfortable, right? Because he told me I'm wrong and I don't like that feeling. It makes me feel uncomfortable. So my immediate reaction is to go into fight mode, and that is being defensive. Yeah? So how might they be feeling? He might be feeling embarrassed. He might be feeling shame of being told he's wrong. He might feel threatened. So how might we help to reframe that thought that when somebody tells you something, be it if they tell you in a way that tells you you're wrong, or if they're scolding you, how might you reframe your thoughts so that you don't feel defensive about it, you don't feel like they're attacking you, you don't feel like they're challenging your autonomy, you don't feel threatened by it, right? So understanding first that they feel this way, right? These are the feelings that go through their mind, they feel that way, is critical in helping them reframe it. So in this example, we can say, I understand, for example, Tobias, I understand that you feel threatened or you feel embarrassed when somebody tells you you're wrong, right? Or when somebody scolds you. It doesn't feel pleasant. Yeah, the feelings, validate those emotions. It doesn't feel nice to be told you're wrong. But you know what's the great thing? When somebody tells you something you didn't know, and it helps you see things in a different way that you've never thought of before. So instead of they're telling you you're wrong, you're helping them to reframe it into they're telling you something that you didn't know, so you just learned something new today. And guess what? Now it's your knowledge, so now you know about it too. And you can do it in a better way next time, and that will help you become stronger and better at what you do. Right? So it's about reframing it, helping to see the positivity in it. It's teaching them a growth mindset, right? In these simple changes of thoughts, in these simple reframing exercises from the previously negative patterns. It's the same thing here. If your child feels ashamed from falling down and starts blaming the toys or blaming whoever put it there, and it might just well be them, you can say, well, I understand it must feel really painful to fall down like that. Does it hurt, right? First of all, validate those emotions, validate the feelings and the pain that comes with falling down. Yeah, and I'm sure you feel a little bit embarrassed because you think everybody's looking at you, right? And it doesn't look nice to fall down, right? It doesn't look so graceful to fall down. But when you blame somebody else for it, first of all, it makes that person feel sad. And if it isn't that person who put it there, it will make them feel frustrated, right? That I wasn't the person who put it there, why did you blame me? And we'll all end up probably quarreling. So that's not so nice. The next time you fall down, you can always just say, oopsie, I fell down, right? You can say it like that and it becomes a funny thing. And just say, oopsie, I fell down, and you help yourself back up again, and you can always go back to your toys and play. So it's nothing embarrassed. We all fall down sometimes. Even mommy, when I'm walking on the streets, I fall down sometimes, right? And nice and kind people help me up, and they help me feel better, and I don't feel so pain anymore after falling down, and I can just get back right up and continue walking proud and strong again. And so the key thing here is understanding how they feel and not ignoring those emotions or trying to push them away, but after validating them, what is a positive way to move on from those feelings?
Thanks for tuning in to the Experimental Parent. Remember, we are all in this together. So if you have a story, topic suggestion, or feedback you'd like to share, we'd love to hear from you. You can DM me on the show's Instagram, The Experimental Parent, or leave a comment here. If you enjoyed this podcast, don't forget to like or subscribe so you never miss out on future episodes. Your support means the world to us. So let us know, how was your experiment today?